What's up everybody? Welcome to another art video. This one is absolutely full of tutorials, failures, tricks, tips, hacks. This is the all-encompassing art video that you guys have been asking for. It's long. I think this is probably my longest art video. Honestly, there are fails in this and I show you guys everything. I want you guys to know my learning curve so that maybe it speeds yours up. We're gonna jump right into it. Guys, please give this video a thumbs up. It does help the video. It helps me. If you guys enjoy my content at any time, if you don't want to do it now, you want to wait, okay, give me a thumbs up at any point in the video that you like, okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, and subscribe to my channel if you guys like some art videos. All right, please enjoy this art video of the making of a clear Nike shoe. So this art video starts in our 3D printing software. First, I loaded in the Nike shoe STL file, but I realized I didn't have enough space to print 2 life-size shoes in one go. So I got rid of one of them and then upscaled the one shoe to as big as it could possibly go on the build plate. I then angled the print slightly so it would print better. I then added some drainage holes. This is gonna give any resin that might be stuck on the inside of the shoe a way out. The final step before printing is to add some supports. Now for this one, I went with heavy-duty supports. This is just because I figured the shoe is gonna be pretty heavy when it prints. Once that was all set, I topped up my vat with some green transparent resin. Now I've never used this kind before, but apparently it's plant-based, so we'll see how this works. I put about 3 full bottles in here, and these are about 50 bucks a bottle. Once it was topped up, I hit print. Now this was estimated to be about 13 hours of printing time. And what you see here is a time lapse of it being printed. "13 hours later, it was done. And by the looks of it, it was a success.
Oh my god, it worked. Look at that. That's amazing. The detail. Look at the back loop right there. Oh my god, this is so sick.
I'll be honest, this was way more detailed than I thought it was gonna be. Now I gotta give you guys credit. Ever since you told me to print it on a slight angle, I have not had one single failed print. So thank you for that. Just look at the detail of this shoe. Everything from the stitching to the laces to the even hoop on the back of the shoe, it's incredible. Now I gotta give credit where it's due. If you guys have a 3D printer and you wanna do this yourself, I'll put a link to the file in the description down below. This was made by Studio Neo L3. But trust me, there's a lot of shoe files out there. However, this is by far the most detailed Nike SB high top that's out there. Okay, now it's time to remove the supports. And since these are heavy duty, it's gonna take a bit of muscle.
Okay, next up, isopropyl alcohol.
Next, it was time to get rid of any uncured resin that is left on the surface of our print. For this, I'm using 99% isopropyl alcohol. And from past experiments, this is literally one of the only things that will help you get rid of uncured resin. Once it was completely rinsed down and then dried, it was time to get rid of the supports on the bottom of the shoe, which means back to the pliers. Once they were all done, I rinsed them again in some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of any resin that may have dripped from the inside. And then it was time to post-cure it under a black light. Now during this art piece, I learned that nothing obviously competes with the sun's UV rays. So even though it might not be sunny outside, the UV rays during the daytime are much stronger than this black light. Once I was post-cured, it was time to patch up any of the blemishes that came off with the large supports. For this, we're using wood filler. Once that was done, it was time to plug any holes or even spaces with some clay. Keep in mind, we're gonna submerge this in silicone. So if there's any loops like the back of this shoe, the silicone is gonna get in there, basically locking the shoe into our silicone. So to avoid that, any sort of tunnels or hoops, we need to fill with clay. And actually, this print is so detailed to a fault. The laces actually have spaces underneath them. So they're 3D separate laces. Once the outside was done, it was time to plug the inside. Now I tend to get a lot of PR packages, and a lot of them actually have this shredded paper stuffing. So I'm gonna take some from a recent package and put as much of it as I can inside the shoe. Once that's full to the top, I'm gonna use a thin layer of clay just to seal it shut. Now our shoe is fully prepped to be molded. Now that we're at the molding stage, we need to make a molding case. And for this, I'm actually gonna use the box the plant-based resin came in. Throughout this entire art video, I tried to show you guys how much stuff you could actually recycle or reuse. This being a perfect example.
This right here is the box that the resin came in, and that's the same resin I made the shoe with. I had to sort of break down the walls and sort of extend it out, but like you have a gap all the way around, which is perfect. That's what we've done here. I highly recommend you do a layer of tape around the outside, just as like a safety net. Let's tape around the outside of this mold just to make sure it's solid, and then we'll get to pouring.
This is now something I do on every single silicone mold. That stuff will find any single crack or crevice and start to leak out. I highly recommend you guys tape it up. I quickly blasted it with some mold release. Next, it was time for the silicone. This is a fast curing 2-part silicone, so it's a part A and a part B. And what's great about this is it's a 1-for-1 mix, so it's super straightforward. Whatever you pour of part A, which is this white stuff, you match it with the same amount of part B, which is this blue stuff. And then you mix. And the way you know this stuff is fully mixed is once all of the white is completely gone and it's one solid blue color. Pop the shoe inside of our mold box and then pour our silicone. It's best to pour the silicone in one spot and let it slowly rise up over your piece. Now this used quite a bit of silicone, so we went ahead and mixed another batch. Now since this is fast curing silicone, it's got about 9 minutes of working time and it'll fully cure in about 30 minutes. Since silicone is so expensive, I want to show you guys how you could actually recycle an old mold and incorporate it into a new one.
Since all we need to do is pour silicone on this portion, I don't want to waste it and pour it all over here, right? Because we don't need that spot. So I'm going to show you guys how to recycle an old mold to actually fill this void so we're not wasting more silicone.
The great thing about silicone is that silicone will actually fuse to other silicone. So if you have an old mold, it's best that you cut it up into small little squares and dice it up as small as you want it. I'm happy with this size, and as you can tell, I still have about 3/4 of my mold left. Using the diced silicone that we just made, I popped it into our current mold where I don't want resin to just fuse nothing. And this is basically just to fill as much area space as possible. You'll see here, it'll seep in, fusing everything into one chunk, but also saving us more space so we're not using more silicone. After a few pours and a couple hours later, it was time to demold our piece. Thankfully, I sprayed in mold release, so this stuff will come right off. Once the box was off, it was time to remove our shoe from the inside. This is going to take a bit of muscle. But once it was out, we were left with a completely identical silicone mold of our shoe. However, there was one issue. I'm not sure what was left on the outside of this shoe, but it prevented a part of the silicone from curing. You'll see it's all shiny and actually sticky, and that's some of the silicone. For this art piece, I'm using Total Boat Thick Set Clear Casting Epoxy. I've never used this stuff, but I've heard that it's amazing for doing sculptures like this. The difference is, this is a 3-to-1 mix, where I usually use a 1-to-1 mix. Thankfully, Total Boat has these mixing cups that make it super easy. You just match the 3-to-the-3, 2-to-the-2, or the 1-to-the-1 based off of how much you want to pour. The part A is pretty much the same stuff. It's a syrupy clear epoxy, similar to what I used in previous videos. But part B is like water, and you're only using 1/3 the amount. This takes some getting used to because it actually mixes in like it's water, which is why this stuff is amazing. It'll allow the bubbles to actually pop and rise out on its own because it's not like syrup. Once that was done, I slowly poured it into our mold. I waited about 4 hours before pouring the next layer, just because it's recommended you do max a 2-inch pour, and this is already a little bit higher, but the second batch was completely fine. And then a couple hours later, I poured a final pour.
Fully topped up. Okay, it's time to unmold our piece. This thing is super heavy. There is our shoe. It's solid, it looks great. The only issue is, well, look at all the bubbles. We're gonna go over with a layer of UV resin. Let's just try the toe cap here and see what happens. Let's just see what happens to these bubbles.
All of those bubbles came because my silicone didn't actually fully cure. Well, it actually held onto a lot of air on the inside. And I figured by using some UV resin, I could maybe fill those bubbles in. It actually didn't work.
We need a plan B for this. This is not usable art. Like, I could not share this piece. Not unless we sand down a very thin layer of the outside and then coat it in resin just to get rid of the bubbles. I'm gonna do it one more time, but we're gonna put the resin through the vacuum chamber because I don't know if these bubbles are from that or if it's from the actual mold. This is horrible. Weird that there's no bubbles on the inside. It's just the outer layer. But I'm worried that when I sand it, I'm essentially gonna lose all of the finer detail.
So I started in on a fresh new piece. This time, just to make sure it's not the resin, I ran it through the vacuum chamber to get rid of any bubbles that might be inside of it. Something that is always very satisfying to watch. Now that my resin was completely airless, I knew that if there were bubbles, it was not from it. Remember this moment, because this exact thing that I'm doing right now is what made this second one a fail. Instead of waiting for that second layer to cure, I figured there's only about a ½ inch left, so I might as well top the rest up so we can get it done earlier.
Bad news, guys. This is where I went wrong. I burned the resin. This is what it looks like. You can see how it's all yellow. Not only that, resin can crack, and that's what's happened in here. I'm gonna take the shoe out and show you more. Even though we have less bubbles, and it does kind of look sick here, we burnt the resin right there. There, it's all cracked on the toe there too. So that's my second fail. We have the first one. This is the color it should be, right? And this one's all bubbly. So that's not usable. Then we've got one that's less bubbly, but it's burnt. So honestly, that's not usable either. 2 fails. Because these take so long to cure, and because now we have 2 fails, that's essentially 2 full wasted days. But this happens, right? Once I know how to use this resin, it won't happen again, but it is a bit of a learning curve. Back to the drawing board.
Now, before I gave up on that first piece with all the bubbles, I decided maybe I'll try to salvage it by sanding down just an exterior layer to get rid of all those surface level air bubbles. This is a technique I've done in the past, and I know that the outcome will actually make it look like it's an ice sculpture. Once all the bubbles were gone, I cleaned it up with some water and a toothbrush to get rid of any resin dust that was from the sanding. And since the sanding actually makes it foggy, I went in with a layer of UV resin to make it crystal clear, to actually make it look like ice. So this actually went from a completely unusable art piece to now a totally different one. It's like an ice sculpture water shoe, and it is completely clear too. Okay, back to the original piece. I wasn't happy with this mold, so I went ahead and recycled it just like I did the first time. Now, since I'm doing this, it's gonna take an entire day again, but I've invested enough money that I don't want this to be a fail. So we're gonna actually do this again. I built up the walls for another mold. I'm not gonna show the entire process. You guys know what it is. Mixed it in some silicone, which is very satisfying, by the way. It's kind of like I'm making some blue cake batter. But you do not want to eat this stuff. I even went the extra mile to put this through the vacuum chamber, something you do not need to do with silicone. But seeing how it held onto air with the first one, I wasn't taking any chances. I loaded up our mold with as much cured silicone from the first one as possible, so we're not wasting as much. Once that was done, it was time to pour our second batch. Actually, our third batch. I degassed the resin, but for added measure, I went ahead with a paintbrush and just sort of scraped the inside of the mold so resin will get everywhere, removing any potential air that is left over. Then I poured a little bit more resin, hit it with a heat gun, and then used the paintbrush again just to scrape any of the sides. Quick pause here, I want to show you how satisfying it is. I had to show it one more time. This is also on my TikTok and Instagram separately because mixing silicone with one of these drill mixers makes this cool spiral thing. I had to show you guys. Okay, back to the video.
Moment of truth here. I hope this works. I have spent weeks
on this piece. I have spent hundreds of dollars, 2 failures, a ton of silicone. I've never been so persistent of trying to get a piece done. The house is a total disaster right now, as you can tell. I'm looking a little ratchet. Just do a quick run through, tidy up my entire kitchen. All right, let's do the shoe. Yes, she looks good, baby. Look at that. We have all of the detail in the shoe. It's still a little soft on the bottom. That is super clean. Look at that. We still have to do the post work, but damn. Yes, yes. 3 days. You can't beat me. Now it's time to add in our sprinkles. For this, I just want to make the Nike symbol on the shoe full of sprinkles. So I'm using UV resin, painting it into our symbol, and then just dropping the sprinkles on. And whatever sticks will stay. I cured that first layer, and then I went in with tweezers and went one by one to make sure the outline of our shoe symbol was clean. This was a very tedious process, as you guys can see. However, if you want to have a nice clean line, just dropping the sprinkles won't do it. So sort of like bedazzling something with diamonds, I went in with sprinkles and some tweezers. As a final added touch, I really liked how the first shoe turned out with how clean it was, so I did a final layer of UV resin on the entire shoe. This is gonna make any foggy resin both smooth, glossy, and completely clear. So I went in with a very, very thin layer. I didn't use too much. I just wanted the effect of clarity and glossiness. There it is, guys. This is the final copy. Turned out so great. Obviously, I learned my lesson quite a few times in this video. This video took me more than a week to film, mainly because of the fails. And then also, at one point, I was interviewing Richard Branson. I had to throw that flex in there. I'm sorry. So that's sort of, I prioritized that for obvious reasons. But then I got back to it. So yeah, the Nike shoe with the, sprinkled logo. The ice sculpture version, the one that I salvaged that I sanded, which was sort of a new fun technique. Yes, I got the piece done, but I also, this video showed that, you know, sometimes you're going this way and the results bring you over here. And instead of just letting it die and stopping and quitting here, you could sort of try to modify it. You really have to roll the punches when it comes to making art pieces, because sometimes it doesn't work out. It doesn't mean you quit. It means you could either modify that or you could start again, like I did both times in this video. If you guys want to see some cool photos of this, over on my Instagram, I just posted them at Danocracy. Got a few different ones there. If you guys like my artwork, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And I've got all the info in the description down below, from my art store link to where you can get Total Boat resin. Just more details, like my TikTok. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys learned something fun from this video. And if you have any art ideas you would love for me to try, please comment down below. I love reading them. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next art video. See you guys later.